Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. Today, we are here with Bob King. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which, Bob, is what?
Closing.
Closing. Amen.
Yes.
Closing and sales, because without sales, then there is no closing.
And vice versa.
Without closing, there's no sales. Yeah, I love that. It's actually really smart.
Yeah.
Man, that's good stuff. Well, listen, I appreciate having you here today, and thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank your audience for tuning in. Amazing. This is my first live stream. I've never streamed live before.
All right. Well, hey,
so
welcome.
Be gentle.
It's super easy, man. Just pretend everybody's like they tell you when you speak to a crowd of people, just pretend everybody's in their underwear, right? And you'll be fine. So, but not me though.
That can be a double-edged sword.
I'm the only one you see though, so it doesn't matter. You just pretend no one else is here. You won't even know. But so let me tell you guys a little bit about Bob King. He is an author. He is the closing coach. He's also a filmmaker and a sales superstar. He consults sales teams and sales professionals of all types, from retail to home sales, business to business, bringing one-call magic to his pitches, curing slumps, boosting team performance, and turning total strangers into happy customers, often at the very first meeting. Man, and then his directorial, let me get that right, debut, Psycho Beach Party, premiered the Sundance Film Festival, and he was still on the staff. Favorite shelf, when his last video rental store shut down, which was at Blockbuster. Is that your
probably
favorite?
No, it's probably an independent store somewhere.
Got it. Okay, cool.
San Fernando Valley. Yeah.
Anyway,
it was a very beloved film. It launched a lot of careers, just not mine. And that's how I got into sales.
Awesome. And you've won numerous awards from various employers, including Sales Star of the Year, many years running. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So in his book, I mentioned at the beginning, well, I don't know if I mentioned, the book is called The Joy of Closing. So our interview today, Bob, is called Advanced Sales Skills with Bob King and David Hill. Now, you've been in sales for 15 years. That's a long time to be in sales, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I got into it late in life. And I think part of what helped me or why I wanted to write a book is I kind of had an outsider's perspective. And maybe I was, at a different stage in life than a lot of people are when they're starting off in sales. And so when I went through that journey that I think a lot of salespeople go through, where you kind of work for people that you find out aren't the best people to work for or the best people to put your customers in business with, but you need that time to hone your skills into working for, people where making that decision to go forward really is the best thing for everybody. And so, I had this crazy, adventure, which I wanted to write a book so people would, take the stigma out of closing. There's a lot of great books about sales. There's a lot of great, the approach to sales, how you approach a customer, how you think of your customer has really evolved. I wouldn't say the same thing about closing. It still is, most of the time when I read a book about closing, I can't get through it. It just kind of makes my skin crawl, and it very much reflects what I was trained to do and not what I learned how to do, as a closer. So
why does closing get such a bad rap, Bob? What do you think is like, what are some of the reasons why people are so, oh my gosh, I don't want to be closed?
I think there's two reasons. Well, first of all, it's really hard to do. Being a closer is not easy. You have to kind of resummon your enthusiasm. You have to commit to the idea that going forward is the best thing. And that means being vulnerable. And most people just don't want to be vulnerable, especially, after a few people say no, which is part of, sales. You're going to get some no's no matter how good you are or how great your product is or how awesome your company is. It's just, people have a process and you're going to fit in wherever you fit into that process. But I feel like, to answer your question, the main reason is because what gets lost in a lot of what's been written about closing that I've read, and I have not done any kind of comprehensive study. I just know when like I was running a sales team and someone would say, read this book, you know, the only sales book I ever got all the way through was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is a great book. And the rest of them kind of like just rubbed me the wrong way. And they reflected what I was trained to do, not what I had learned how to do, which is basically be of service to the customer by getting them something that they want. That's what got lost, I think, in a lot of sales books. And that's really the focus of The Joy of Closing. Okay.
I love it. What do you think? Like, so to that point, and I want to hear your philosophy on what makes a great closer. Like, I know you mentioned the book, but let's break that down into some steps that our listeners can implement.
I mean, it all starts with your brain, right? It all starts with, if you don't believe in what you're doing, and you know, you can believe in what you're doing because it really is something you can believe in, or you can manufacture it. It's a lot better when you really believe it, when you work for a reputable company that's going to do a good job, that has a product that benefits your customers. That's really the core of it. You have to have that going in, or you're multiplying everything by 0. So that's where it starts.
So just to pause there for a minute, but so what you're saying is they have to be sold on the product they're selling. Like, first and foremost, do you think that's maybe the most important thing
100%
that people could get from this?
You know, we all know they're buying from you, right? They're buying because they trust you.
Well, if you have integrity, Bob, then they have to, right? Like, if you as a salesperson, because you said in the beginning, like you mentioned, you know, you have to be happy with the business you're in, right? Like, it's hard to sell something if you're not sold on it.
Right. And beyond that, you have to do something that's a little unnatural, which is step out of, you know, the sort of relaxed, make them come to you version that most people walk around with, especially after, you know, you do something a few times. It's hard to have that same enthusiasm. Or maybe, you know, you have, I coach a lot of closers too. And so what happens in the life of someone who's turning into a closer is, you know, they get good at pitching, right? They learn how to commit to that idea that going forward today is a great idea. They start closing a bunch of deals, and then sometimes human nature kicks in, and they leave something out. Well, okay, sorry, I got a little distracted. Let me answer your question. Beyond believing it, what you have to do is allow that to be communicated to your customer. And that really, it requires a certain amount of vulnerability and a certain amount of outgoingness in the face of, you know, you're probably going to get 3 no's for every yes you get. And that you can't let that affect you if you want to be successful.
Yeah. But I want to back up even further, because for salespeople listening, I feel like I see this a lot. You may too. You've been doing this a long time. A salesperson shows up, they're not 100% confident in their product. Maybe they don't really know they know about the product. They don't really know the product. They're not really clear on the real big benefits that you get. And that's actually impacting their ability to sell it.
Absolutely. You got to know your product. You have to really be a trusted expert. It's not enough to come across as a trusted expert. You have to be trustworthy. You have to have your client's best interests at heart. You have to pay attention to them. You have to meet their needs. You have to turn their wants into needs. You have to turn their pain into the pleasure of your solution. You got to do all that stuff. But if you don't start with really believing in what you're doing, none of that's going to really work. You know, you can use all the great word tracks in the world, but if you believe in it, that has a power that nothing else does.
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny. I coach a lot of real estate agents, and one of my clients, we got on a call this morning, and he was telling me about how a deal fell apart. Like, the agent texted him last night and said the buyer's walking. And I said, what did you do? And he's like, well, I don't know. It's frustrating. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to swear, but like, my deals don't fall apart. Like, that's my mindset.
It's easier.
That's why people hire me.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to save a deal than keep a deal, and then get a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah,
to me, that's being sold. Like, you got to be so sold. Like, what do you mean that? No, my deals do not fall when I get a deal together, my job is to keep this deal together and figure out how to get to the closing line. I feel like that is a level of giving upness that a lot of salespeople have when things get a little difficult. And that's what, maybe I'm going on a tangent myself here, but I feel like step number one in sales is you got to be so sold on yourself and your product and what you do and the benefit. And if you're not that, you're never going to reach those high levels.
Yeah, I mean, also you do, want to think about it from the client's perspective. I mean, maybe they can't really afford it or something like that, but most of the time they're just having a little bit of panic and they just need someone to say, no, this is a great investment. And, you're going to be happier 2 years from now that you paid a mortgage instead of rent, or lived in a place you want to live instead of the place you're selling, or whatever that, the real estate version of it is. But you just need to, connect with their reasons for going forward and communicate them in an effective way. But again, that all starts with believing in what you're doing and seeing your job as having value, and that getting the customer what they want, doesn't mean you're not going to work with their resistance. You have to work with their resistance. And that's really all you're talking about when, it's a client's just having second thoughts or something like that, mid process. Most of the time they're just giving you resistance and they want you to help them resolve it.
That's normal, I think, to an extent. But again, this particular situation was he's a listing broker, and there's another agent involved, and the other agent just called him or texted him like, "Hey, my buyer's backing out," and he was just like, "Okay," like, "No, okay, it's not." And here's the thing: the deal is back together. 3 hours later, he called me thanking me and saying, "You know what? I reached out to her. I said, what do we need to do to keep this deal together?" Something over a $3,000 fix. The buyer didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. It just a little, this is what I mean. Like, we have to be so
exactly
mind,
just something someone wasn't saying.
Solver.
Yeah, it's just something someone wasn't saying in communication that wasn't occurring. So the other thing at the very start that I think the difference between a closer and a salesperson a lot of times just comes down to paying attention. Is just having a human connection with the person you're talking to, and really trying to understand their needs instead of impose your will onto them. And when I, have seen other stuff about closing, it's all about imposing your will and customer is the enemy and all that stuff. And that's just not my world. I don't want to live in that world. And I don't think that's a great way to get repeat business and have a referral based business and all the things that come with being a really good closer and making customers happy that they made that decision.
So when you say, well, I'm going to switch gears. I apologize. My phone's ringing here, so hopefully you guys didn't hear that. But when you, let's talk about advanced sales skills. Like, what do you mean by advanced? What are some advanced sales skills for people?
I saw I think the advanced sales skill is what happens after you learn how to get the sale. Because if you're not getting the sale, like the first step is just learning how to get people to say yes, right? But when you get them to say yes, which I have a bunch of coaching clients right now that are sort of in that process where, they've got some deals. And then there comes this thing where, you work, when you're in the warm glow of your sales pitch, you talk about your company in ways that makes the customer want to do business with you. But companies are full of real people and people make mistakes, and not every job is going to go exactly how you describe it as it moves through, operations or whatever your widget's version of that is. And so it's easy to get all activated. So the first part of the book's just my personal history, how I came into the knowledge that I came into, because I think it's really valuable to understand that for someone reading the book. The second part is a how-to book on how to earn someone's business, ideally on the first day, 7-step process, or 7 steps in a forecast that basically create one call magic for, customers. And even if it's not on the first day, at least you make that great impression that makes them want to do business with you. And then the last part is creating happy customers, because happy customers just don't happen. We create them. And there's so many things that a salesperson can do to influence that, not only by following up very slightly, just a little bit more than what they're probably doing now, but also what you say at the outset that creates success for your company later. And if there are problems, how to handle that, how to be a customer service ninja, how to turn around customers. So the advanced part would be, dealing with real life and, what happens outside the warm glow of your sales pitch to the customer, and how to reconcile that with, your intention to bring them happiness.
Yeah. Sorry, I get distracted, man. To be honest with you, my wife is texting me as it's probably my first time having this issue on a podcast.
That's the beauty of live streaming, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
Amen. Well, I do a lot of these. But to that point, let me and just keep going. I love it. What is so I want to go into your process, the joy of closing.
Yes.
So this definite guide to building trust, getting the deal, and creating happy customers. So talk to me about what do you mean by, let's bring people through those 3 steps. So building trust, getting the deal, creating happy customers.
Okay. So building trust is really something you want to do the moment you arrive. I don't really care if a customer likes me or not. I care if they trust me. And so if I have to make a choice between saying something they're going to like and saying something that's going to build trust with that customer, I always err on the side of building trust, because a customer will buy from someone they don't like, but they will never buy from someone they don't trust. So, really focusing on what's going to give that customer confidence that they're going to get the whole story from me about whatever it is we're talking about, that I'm going to bring them an expert's perspective, and I'm going to use any information they provide to me to give them better advice. So I'm reciprocating whatever trust they place in me with an elevated understanding on their part of what might work best.
Okay, got it. And then what about the bringing them to the next step, which is
getting the deal? I mean, it's closing also is about, look, if you're someone who avoids conflict, doesn't like to take leadership roles, and likes to stay in the shadows, then maybe closing's not the best career choice for you. But if you want to be in the room where it happens, closing is the room where it happens. And closing is everything that happens after you present price. And so the first thing's going to happen is the customer's probably going to tell you a lie. Customers lie all the time. We lie about one thing, and that's that it's cheaper today, or that today is the best day for you to do this. Sometimes, depending on, a lot of times that's not a lie. A lot of times there are circumstances that make going forward today better. But, if you consider a sale a lie, which I kind of do, there's no reason why, that barbecue is cheaper on 4th of July than, the weekend after, right? That doesn't really make sense. So there is a certain amount of, that, but other than that, everything ideally that you tell a customer is the truth. And meanwhile, the minute you ask them for the deal, they're going to start saying, oh, I need to discuss this with so-and-so who's not here, or, I need to think about it, or whatever version they're going to tell you. And so in the book, they're in the chapter on closing, which was the hardest chapter for me to write by far. It's the longest chapter in the book. There are, 13 objections and 11 objections and 13 closes that you can use interchangeably, that you can use your intuition. And the point is not to have some magic words to say because the customer said this. The point is to use their objection as a way to understand where they're, what's really holding them back, to create intimacy and to build on the trust that you've established throughout the sales call, to really find out what's going on and hold that space for them to move forward by asking for the deal again. There's a lot of pointers in there too. Stop talking is a big one. There's a lot of practical technique in there as well. But the main thing is also just having the difference between how I'm framing it and maybe about a lot of what's out there is that it's really how you be of service to the customer. It's not how to get what you want or buy something for your family or whatever noble motive you have to be successful. It's really about serving your customer. And that's a different perspective on closing than most of what I've seen.
Yeah. I do want to go back to what you said about the, the do something today. From my experience, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it's creating urgency, because most people, if there's no urgency to do anything, they won't do it. They'll just keep kicking it down the street. Right. So I think that's a way to help create urgency.
And what is creating urgency really, David, but working with their resistance? Creating urgency is a way of working with their resistance. It's giving the customer that customers buy usually for a small, stupid reason. There's some dumb little thing that they find so appealing that they're like, you know what, let's do it. You know, I don't want my customer buying analytically. I want my customer buying because it feels right.
Well, what do you mean by a dumb little thing? I'm not following you on that.
So a sale is a dumb little thing. It's going to save them a little bit more money, but you know, compared to what they're spending on whatever it is, there's no sale that's that significant, right?
I don't know, man. Somebody's buying a house. You don't think that's significant for some people?
$3,000 is why that buyer went through. $3,000. How much was the house? Like $1 million or something?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay,
yeah,
so that's a small stupid reason. Like if you fix the water heater, I'll take it. Right? That is a dumb stupid reason.
So you're referring to the objections that
that's
they give
not
you
because of where the house is located, where the schools are. That is just a tiny stupid little thing that was going to derail the deal, and now it's the reason they're going forward. I mean, I'm just using that because you mentioned
Sure. So I think you're talking about
their dog. I mean, it literally could be. I mean, you know, when you get there, did you look them in the eye and know their first name? It really could just be that. Like we don't know. Customers, they don't even know, right? But if they did know, they wouldn't tell you. They would say, "Oh no, I want it because, you know, of all some noble reason that they think is analytical and smart." But the truth is, something made them trust you. They come to see you as a trusted expert. They know that you're going to take good care of them, and that's really why most people go forward with most purchases.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so talk to us about the book, The Joy of Closing.
Yes, sir.
You know, where can people get a copy of your book?
It's all Amazon right now. So it's Amazon. Yeah. It's on Amazon, and there's a Kindle. There's a audiobook that has me as the narrator, and there is a paperback.
Okay, cool. And why should everybody right now go out and grab a copy of your book?
It's a force for good in the world, and it will make you feel better about a part of most salespeople, even very experienced salespeople, somehow see closing as like this thing they have to do instead of what it really is, which is what makes you valuable. It's being able to close the customer. Anybody can present. Being able to close the customer, to work with their resistance and get them something that they want is why they pay you big bucks. It is an unnatural act that most people can't do. And for whatever reason, I'm someone who just knows how to turn salespeople into closers. And that's why I wrote the book, because not everyone can afford my consulting fee, and I only have so many hours to give. So I put it all in a book, and it will help you do that, but then help you get past what comes after that, which is, learning how to be a decent person within your company and to your customers after you get the sale. So it's all of that. And it's a fun story, and it's a crazy adventure. I was hired by scoundrels, and I took the first job because I wanted to know why, what the con was. And there was a con, and I learned how to do it. And then I learned why I didn't need to do it. And that's why I wrote the book.
And how would somebody know, like, if for somebody listening now, to like, I'm curious, would I be a good closer? What would you be some of the attributes of somebody that's going to be really successful at this?
I think it's important to be articulate. I think you have to have the potential to be trustworthy. I mean, I will say the other thing that kind of gets lost in discussions of closing is what it does to us to earn someone's trust. How does that change you? And, like advanced closing is really just letting the goodwill that you created be palpable, so that if you created a happy customer, if you got someone to move forward with something they wanted and they got it and they're having all the success, or at least a big part of what you described to them, you have to let that affect you. And be a human being, and take that into your next meeting and take that confidence in. But that doesn't just happen because you sold a deal. There's things you need to do to really cultivate that. And most importantly, you just need to let yourself feel it. We live in a world where, everyone thinks like the best reason to buy something is because of the price. And that just isn't true. I like to believe that's not true. And I think we have real value. There's nothing more exciting than finding what you want and getting it. And maybe the only thing more exciting is helping someone else do that. So if that's exciting to you, everyone's a closer in life. I mean, there are moments I'm ranting. Ask me another question so I can just go on with this answer and not feel like I'm filibustering.
No, that's fine. We're gonna get wrapping up now anyway. So like, what's the final thought? Like, do you want everybody that listened to this to walk away with?
Well, the other thing is everybody is a closer and everyone has been closed. And so, you know, if you've ever gotten your kids to clean their room or go to college or their plate or pick the book club that your book club reads or the movie on a Saturday night, you have closed people. You have taken your agenda. You have gotten another human being to willfully adopt your agenda. So you can't really live life and not have that happen. And so the question is, you know, are you going to be conscious about it? Are you going to make money from that quality and be of service to the world? Or, you know, do you want to just let it lay dormant? But if you're a salesperson, taking that leap into closer, you know, your salary will quadruple and you will have a better experience of yourself than just sitting behind that cash register, reading your horoscope, looking up and saying, can I help you?
Amen to that, my man. So how do people
or
get
some
in touch
whatever
with-
version of that you're doing? Like, get out of there, man. Like, get out and really help people. That's what I would say to salespeople who are also, if you just want to know why you bought that timeshare, the book will tell you why you bought that timeshare on a day you never thought about timeshares. There are techniques, and you know, I outline them, you know, and I'm not advocating them, but you'll figure out what they are from the book. So it solves that mystery too, if that's just a curiosity you might have.
All right, awesome, man. How do people get in touch with you? Social?
Bob at joyofclosing.com. If your company buys 20 books, I will give you an hour of free coaching. Or I also do consulting for, you know, larger companies and things like that. So I'm available. Awesome. Bob at joyofclosing.com is my, or LinkedIn, wherever they want to find me.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, Bob. Thank you for joining us today on Path to Mastery, and looking forward to
what a treat
checking out your book.
Thank you, David. And thank your listeners. Thanks, everybody.